Hello and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. I am joined by Catherine Becknow, volunteer coordinator for the Washington Crossing Historic Park. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, thank you so much.
So today we are going to talk about the park in general and, of course, the very exciting reenactment of Washington crossing the Delaware, which is coming up in just a few short days. So why don't I let you take it away, Catherine?
All right, great. So again, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be able to do this. As Sarah said, I'm Catherine. I'm the volunteer coordinator here at Washington Crossing Historic Park, specifically for the Friends of Washington Crossing Park. So let me see if I can just make that shareable. Can everybody see that screen?
Oh, we got a little bit of a glitch, it seems, just in the loading. Do you want to, what does it look, do you want to refresh it on your side for us? And then we'll...
Yeah, let's see. Maybe stop screen, share screen. Sorry, everybody.
Okay, no worries, no worries.
Okay. We good?
So it's still looking like not complete to me. Perhaps if you don't put it in presentation mode and we just look at it through the, it seems like it's freezing in between going to presentation mode and, you know.
Okay. Let's try share screen. We'll just do the application window.
Perfect.
Okay, can we see that?
Yep, go ahead and put it in presentation mode.
All right, so get a little bigger. That way everybody can see. All right, so again, welcome guys. So we're gonna start by talking a little bit about the history of the park and specifically what happened here and kind of why we are a park, if you will. So we commemorate the site where Washington crossed the Delaware, Christmas Day, December 25th, 1776. You can see the image here of the famous Emanuel Leutze painting, which is now at the Metropolitan Museum of Art up in New York. So leading up to Washington crossing the Delaware in December of 1776, Washington is not a good spot at all. So between August 27th, 1776 and December 8th, 1776, Washington loses 6 battles. He has to retreat from Long Island to right where we are located, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He's not exactly inspiring a lot of confidence from Congress or his generals in his leadership either. I always like to say, think of this as your favorite sports team. So for me personally right now, that's the Philadelphia Eagles. And if the Eagles have lost 6 games straight, and we're not even talking close games, we're talking embarrassing, they get blown out 42-0. We're probably not thinking the Eagles are the best team ever and they're going to win the Super Bowl. More likely we're thinking, maybe this is a rebuilding year and maybe we need a new coach. So Washington is in much the same spot. Even as he is crossing the Delaware, General Gates is on his way to Congress to tell Congress, this guy has no idea what he's doing. You need to fire George Washington and you need to hire me. There's also the fact that he's about to lose his army. In August of 1776, Washington has about 23,000 men in the army. By December, he's down to about 5,000 to 7,500 men. And the majority of those men's enlistments are going to be up at the end of the year. And these guys are not going to willingly sign up for another year of it. They are going home. And you really can't blame them. They are in summer clothes. Many of them no shoes on their feet. They haven't been paid in months. They're not being fed real well. I don't know about anybody here, but given those conditions, I'm not going to willingly sign up for another year of it. I've actually flat out told my husband's actually in the Air Force, has been in the Air Force for 16 years. And I've told him, if you are in the conditions that Washington's army is in leading up to this crossing, it may be time to rethink your career because things are that bad. So basically, Washington is at the point where he knows he has to do something. It has to be something major, and it has to happen right now, or this is over. The other issues are that the British and Hessians are encamped across the river in New Jersey. There are 1,500 Hessians, which are German mercenaries, primarily from Hesse-Hanau and Hesse-Cassel. They are encamped in Trenton under the leadership of Colonel Rahl. There's more Hessians that are supposed to be in Bordentown under the leadership of Colonel von Dunnup. And then the main British garrison is in Princeton. But even with that spread out situation, Washington knows that it won't be too hard for the British and Hessians to gather on the Jersey side of the river. If this river freezes over completely, the fear is that the British and Hessians will march across the ice and they will head straight into Philadelphia. Philadelphia at this point is not just the largest city in the United States, but it's also the capital. And in European warfare, you capture the capital, you have won the war. So the British and Hessians are on the verge of ending this revolution completely forever. So Washington's plan on Christmas Day, he has what I call a 3.5-prong attack plan. The half prong is Washington's cousin, William. William Washington is going to cross with about 50 men, including an 18-year-old by the name of Lieutenant James Monroe, later the 5th president of the United States. William Washington and those 50 guys, they are the advance party, so they march through New Jersey, making sure that there are no scouts leading up to where Washington crosses here. And then they go up ahead of Washington's 2,400 men, making sure, again, there are no scouts on the way to Trenton and that the roads are clear. Washington crosses here at McConkey's Ferry, and right in between McConkey's Ferry and Johnson's Ferry, with 2,400 men, including his future Secretary of War, Henry Knox, and his future Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, who is 19 at that point. And then there are two other arms of the attack. He has General Ewing at what is today Morrisville, Pennsylvania. Ewing's job is to keep the Hessians from escaping to the west. He also has General Cadwalader at Bristol. Cadwalader's job is to keep the Hessians that are supposed to be in Bordentown busy so they can't reinforce the 1,500 we know are in Trenton. That is the plan in theory. I always like to remind people I'm a military spouse. I know personally, just because the military plans something does not mean it is always going to work out that way. It's true in 2020. It was true in 1776. Some of the things that go wrong, out of those 3.5 arms, only 1.5 of them make it across the river. That is General Ewing, that is Washington here with 2,400 men and his cousin William at New Hope. For General Ewing at what is today Morrisville, the ice is so bad they can't get across at all. And for General Cadwalader at Bristol, he can get his men, but not his horses and cannon across. And what good are men, especially when they're basically a bunch of farmers with no basic training who have lost all these battles against the greatest army in the world that has beaten you 6 times without your horses and your firepower? So Cadwalader does get about 600 men across before they finally accept it's just not going to work and they cross back. In addition to those issues, Washington also has to face a nor'easter that he crosses in the middle of. It ends up taking 12 hours to get across the river. It's a complete whiteout. But they do march those 9 miles. They defeat 1,500 Hessians in Trenton on December 26, 1776. Washington then crosses back to Pennsylvania on December 27th. Stays here for a bit before heading back to New Jersey and defeating the British led by General Cornwallis at the Second Battle of Trenton, also known as the Battle of the Assunpink, and then defeating the British again at the Battle of Princeton on January 3rd, 1777. These 3 battles and the crossing, they make up what's known as the 10 Crucial Days. It's a major turning point in the Revolutionary War. So that's a bit of the history of the park and what we commemorate here. Now, in terms of the park itself, we were actually founded in 1917. We just recently celebrated our 100th year anniversary. So one thing you'll notice on the screen, hopefully, is the monument that was put up. That was put up in 1895 by the Bucks County Historical Society. It's a stone marker that states that near this spot, Washington crossed the Delaware Christmas night, 1776, the eve of the Battle of Trenton. One thing I always say is that the reason it says near this spot is that unfortunately we are unable to take someone to an exact spot and say, right here, you are standing in George Washington's footprints. This is exactly where he got on the boat. This is a secret mission. There's no photographs. There's no paparazzi. There's no tagging your location on Facebook. And then there's also the fact that there are 2,400 men to get across the river in a short period of time. They're not all lined up at one dock. They're crossing all throughout this area throughout the night. What we do know is that it is between where the bridge is today, which you can see in that picture on the left when you're looking at it. The bridge is the location where one of the ferries, McConkey's Ferry, was. You can also in the other picture see McConkey's Ferry Inn. McConkey's Ferry Inn was the only building that was on site at the time of the crossing. Now, the building we have today is a McConkey's Ferry Inn, and it is a historic McConkey's Ferry Inn. But the oldest part of the building, if you see that line going down the building in the picture, the section that's to the right of it, where hopefully you can see me showing that arrow, that was the oldest part of the building. It's built in the 1790s. I don't know what happened to the building that was here in 1776. It no longer stands, but that section was built on the foundation of the original one that was here in 1776, so we figure it was the same size. So it's between McConkey's Ferry, and there was another ferry that's located at the end of the island that's out in the river today, Johnson's Ferry. It's in between these two ferries where it happens. We know the crossing happens here partly because Washington actually wrote a letter or a note to General Cadwalader, basically telling Cadwalader, I heard you couldn't make it across. I understand, but we're still going to make this crossing happen. So at least try and distract these Hessians that are supposed to be in Bordentown because we're still going to try and do this. But he dates that letter, McConkey's Ferry, 25th December, 1776. Now, at the time of the crossing, the land is owned by a guy named Samuel McConkey. But a few months after the crossing, Samuel McConkey actually went bankrupt, and he sold the land to a guy named Benjamin Taylor. The Taylor family lived here for many, many years, and they built the buildings that now make up our historic village. So our historic village consists of buildings from the early 19th century primarily, a lot of 1820s, 1830s buildings, including the one that I'm actually in now, Mail and Taylor, which was built, I believe it was first built in 1791, actually. So the Taylor family, as I said, they lived here for many years. This whole area was actually known as Taylorsville up until the park was created and the name was changed in 1918. So Washington Crossing Historic Park was actually founded in 1917 in response to urging by the Bucks County Historical Society, the Daughters of the American Revolution, and the Patriotic Order of the Sons of America, as well as the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. And that's when the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania officially created the Washington Crossing Park Commission. The park was established, as I said, in 1917. It was 1918 where that town of Taylorsville officially changed its name to Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania. Washington Crossing Historic Park now includes 500 acres, and we host thousands of visitors each year. They come to see the point from which a battered and dispirited American army launched a counterattack that reversed its long losing streak, reserving its will to fight and maintaining the revolutionary spirit that would lead to independence for the United States. But we also represent a lot more than just this single event. I did mention the historic village. Those buildings, as I said, they're not really colonial era. They're more early federal era, early 19th century. Those include McConkey's Ferry Inn, as I said, Malin Taylor House, the Fry House, and other things. And in those buildings, throughout our programs and our annual events, we use those to show how colonists, as well as people in the early 19th century, how they lived and survived, basically. Additionally, the historic village is what we like to call our lower park. 4 miles north of the lower park is the upper park. So part of those 500 acres includes these 2 upper park sites, Thompson Neely House, as well as the Thompson Neely Grist Mill, and then also Bowman Hill Tower. So Thompson Neely House was built, first started in the 1740s and then continued to be added on all the way throughout the 18th century up to the 1780s. And it commemorates the story of the Thompson Neely family, as well as the 400 soldiers that encamped on the 500-acre property of the Thompson Neelys. Those 400 soldiers include Lieutenant James Monroe, who, as I said, later became the 5th president of the United States. Captain Lieutenant James Moore, who's actually buried on our property as part of our Graves of the Unknown Soldiers. He's the only name we know in our Graves of the Unknown Soldiers. We did find a mass grave on the property of the Thompson Neely House in the 20th century. So we have 23 unknown Revolutionary War soldier headstones. Moore's grave is marked in 1776. The really interesting thing to me about Moore is that if there are any fans of Hamilton the musical here, Moore is actually the second in command to 19-year-old Alexander Hamilton. I'll freely admit I'm a big Hamilton the musical fan, so if you know the song Right Hand Man, the battles they sing about throughout New York, through the New York and New Jersey campaigns, where Hamilton's bravery is shown, Moore would have been right next to him throughout all of that. Moore actually passes away December 25th, 1776. Just a coincidence. He's not involved in the crossing. He actually dies of camp fever, what we now believe is typhus. But his grave was marked, and you can still visit that. And then we also have Bowman Hill Tower. Thompson Neely House was added to the park in 1926. Bowman Hill Tower was built in the 1930s. It was built as a way to commemorate the soldiers that encamped in the area. We think that the hill that the tower is on was used as a lookout point during that 3-week encampment that I mentioned, because it would have been clear-cut farmland, and then even with some trees, it's December, so you could see for miles from the top of that hill. But with Bowman Hill Tower, it was also built as a way to bring people into the park. On a clear day, you actually, from the top of Bowman Hill Tower, have a viewpoint of about 14 to 15 miles. Today, it's actually our most visited site. So as I said, Washington Crossing Historic Park was first created in 1917, but we ran into some issues about 11 years ago. In 2009, during the Great Recession, there were budget cuts to the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, which at the time owned and ran Washington Crossing Historic Park. Today, it's run by the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. But at the time, it was PHMC. So there were budget cuts that would have closed the park. They were also going to cancel our annual reenactment, which, as I said, 2020 will be our 68th year of doing that reenactment. So a group of concerned Bucks County citizens got together and basically said, no, you're not gonna cancel this reenactment. You're not gonna shut this park down. They held a fundraiser and were able to hold the reenactment. And they later formalized themselves into the Friends of Washington Crossing Park, which is who I actually work for. We work hand in hand with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to offer educational programs and annual events through the park. And you guys can see our mission statement on the screen there, which states that the Friends of Washington Crossing Park shares the powerful story of General George Washington's daring crossing of the Delaware River on Christmas night, 1776, and interprets its ongoing impact on world history for both today's citizens and future generations. Through the fundraising and the generous support of our donors and members, we are able to maintain and sustain this significant historic site and welcome thousands of school children, families, individuals, and groups each year. So one of the biggest events, or not even one of the biggest event that we hold each year, is our annual crossing reenactment. The crossing reenactment started in 1953. 2020 is our 68th year of doing this. But there had been some attempts to actually reenact the crossing prior to 1953, including at the Bicentennial in 1876. That's when 100 participants actually marched from Philadelphia to Taylorsville, as the town was known at the time. They crossed the river somehow. We don't know if they used the bridge, if they got in a boat. We don't know exactly how. And then after crossing the river to New Jersey, they continued on the 9 miles to fight a quote unquote battle with the Hessians. Then the next crossing was January 23rd, 1947. That's actually when a group of Phi Sigma Nu fraternity brothers from Rider College decided to do a non-hazing initiation with 40 pledges, where they had those 40 pledges cross the river in 4 rowboats, and then the pledges made their way to Trenton for refreshments at a USO-style canteen. So those are a few pre-official reenactments that happened. But what really started us off was 1952. That is when National Geographic magazine featured a story about the park and the crossing and included a photo of Park Superintendent Granville Sterling rowing 6 young people across the river. In that photo, one of the young people held a flag and one was portraying General George Washington. That article was seen by St. John. It's spelled St. John, but it is St. John Terrell. He apparently was, and this is a quote from our annual program book. He was, quote, a fire-eating circus man and actor with a penchant for showmanship and the spectacular, end quote. Apparently, after seeing that article in National Geographic, he mentioned in a presentation to a Hatboro women's organization in October 1953 that one day he hoped to reenact General Washington's famous crossing. And he actually made it happen. A half-scale Durham boat that cost $800 was constructed. And on December 20th, 1953, Terrell and 6 others crossed the icy river in the first dress rehearsal. Today we call it the first crossing for the reenactment. Then on December 25th, 1953, in front of a crowd of about 700, Terrell and his crew made it across the river in about 8 minutes. And after crossing the river, Terrell actually signed autographs. And that's when this annual Christmas tradition was born. You can actually see St. John Terrell in the picture that's on the upper left when you're looking at it. That's him in 1977 at the reenactment. And if you look right in front of his knee, there's a little boy there. That is actually future Washington reenactor Ron Rinaldi, who would portray Washington in the 2000s in the 2000s. So other Washingtons besides St. John Terrell have included Olympic rower John B. Kelly Jr. That's actually the brother of Princess Grace, or Grace Kelly. He played the role from 1978 to 1984. Our current George Washington, John Godiva, has played the role since 2009. In 1976, the Bicentennial Crossing attracted 20,000 to 26,000 spectators. I don't know for sure if that's the highest except for last year, but certainly an extremely high number, highest we ever had here. And 1976 was also the first year that a woman, Ann Hawks Hutton, officially participated in the crossing. In 1980, the ice was so thick on the river that reenactors for the first time had to march across the bridge rather than get in a Durham boat or a replica Durham boat and cross. And since 1980, there have been years where we've been unable to cross the river due to guidance from the Coast Guard. Could be that the river was too high, could be the river is too low. There was one year where actually the wind was so bad that it was blowing porta potties over. And if you were having porta potties being blown over, there's just no way you can put people safely in a boat. They're going to end up down in Trenton. So in cases like that, we have walked across the bridge. And again, the Coast Guard makes the ultimate decision on that. January 3rd, 1980 was also the first time that the Olympic flame crossed the Delaware River in a Durham boat. It was on its way to the Lake Placid Olympics. It also crossed the river on December 23rd, 2001. You can see that in the picture on the upper right. That was when it was headed to the Salt Lake City Olympics. So I mentioned Durham boats. We do have 5 replica Durham boats. Durham boats are what George Washington used primarily to cross the river, in addition to the ferry boats that he used for the horses and the cannon. They're named for the Durham Iron Works, which was up in Easton, Pennsylvania. They weigh about 4,600 pounds empty. They are the right size width-wise. The Durham boats we use are about 9.5 feet across. They're a little shorter than Washington's originals would have been. The original Durham boats were up to 60 feet long. Ours are about 40 to 45 feet long. And these Durham boats were cargo boats. They're used to carry 20 tons of iron or 150 barrels of flour up and down the river. At the crossing, we always do a skit that includes the moments leading up to when they get in the boat. That includes Washington reading The American Crisis, written by Thomas Paine to his soldiers, which is documented as happening. There's also usually a speaker narrating the events, typically someone representing the armed forces. The crews then get in the boats and they make their way across the river. Cannon fire announces that they've reached the Jersey side. And over the past few years, we've also had our Park Fife and Drum Corps playing specific calls for the reenactment and different orders for the reenactors. We normally have about 200 to 300 reenactors take part. We always do a first crossing reenactment on a Sunday in December, a few weeks before Christmas. The first crossing is a paid fundraiser. It used to be called our dress rehearsal, but we now call it the first crossing. So admission is charged. But at the first crossing, all the buildings in the historic Taylorsville Village are open. We have interpreters offering demonstrations of colonial life like spinning and weaving, quill pen writing, bread making, cooking, things like that, carpentry as well. In 2019, we actually had 3,100 guests at the first crossing. And the Christmas Day crossing is a free event. The buildings are not open as they are during the first crossing. Christmas Day is just the crossing itself. But on Christmas Day 2019, we had between 7,000 and 10,000 people here. And then 2020 happened. You guys can see the picture and kind of know basically what that means. So obviously, when you have an event that draws 7,000 to 10,000 people on one day, and that doesn't include 200 to 300 reenactors, there is no way to take that down to a safe gathering of 100 to 250 people and be able to ensure that everyone's wearing masks, social distance, things like that. But we know how important this event is to our community. It's been a tradition for 68 years. So we had to figure out how can we still honor this tradition and stay within COVID-19 health and safety regulations. And in addition, how do we fulfill that mission to welcome thousands of school children, families, individuals, and groups each year while we're in the midst of a pandemic and in the midst of COVID-19? So this year, in 2 days, we are going to be offering our very first virtual reenactment. What we did is that we had a small, specifically chosen group of reenactors that had to ensure that they were safe and healthy and everything. We had them follow all health and safety guidelines, at least as much as we could. It is admittedly tough to stay 6 feet apart within a Durham boat that's only 40 to 45 feet long and 9.5 feet wide. But overall, everyone was wearing masks while in costume. We stayed extremely safe as we possibly could. We will be debuting this film at 10 a.m. on our website and our social media. You guys can also see the statement from our president of the Friends of Washington Crossing Park and also our reenactor for General George Washington, John Godziba. This was posted on December 19th on our social media. I find it really interesting that he says, quote, that the reenactment serves as a reminder that courage isn't an empty platitude, but a vital characteristic of a leader of a country. It's a reminder that nothing is done single-handedly and that we are stronger when we unite. He also says, as a nation, we have always been strengthened by our struggles, and says that we hope that as you're watching, you'll reflect not only on the sacrifices of those that crossed the Delaware River in 1776, but also reflect on the courage of those who worked tirelessly amidst a pandemic to keep us healthy and our country free. The other thing that we're excited about is we're hopeful with this virtual reenactment that we'll be able to reach a lot of people from all across the country that normally couldn't come to Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I know one way that personally I've been promoting this to guests is to say, the plus side of this is that you can see the crossing while on your couch in your pajamas in front of a nice warm fire instead of having to get up, get dressed, fight with literally thousands of people for a parking spot and a viewing spot. And then you probably also get a better view because you can zoom in with the camera in ways that, with ropes and things, we just can't let people get that close to the boats. So that is our plan for our Christmas Day reenactment. In terms of other programs with 2020, each year we normally offer in-person lectures. You can see our list of planned 2020 lectures from earlier this year. Obviously, 2020 threw us all a big curveball. So a lot of those lectures were canceled, but we were able to offer virtual lectures. One of the annual lectures we do is Who Was Here in December 1776. That is led by our park curator, Kim McCarty. She always picks different stories of some of the 2,400 men that cross here, or those that were on site, maybe at the Thompson Neely House, and things like that, and focuses specifically on them. It's always different stories and people. And this year we were able to do it virtually on Zoom, and you can watch it. We just posted it recently on our social media as well. It's on YouTube as well. And we do have upcoming lectures that we'll be promoting soon. So in what my husband likes to call the before times, we would offer Colonial Day School programs. In 2018 to 2019, we had about 12,000 students here throughout the year for Colonial Days. Colonial Days is offered for as many as 400 students, parents, teachers, and things like that. They go to different stations, including butter making. There's an apothecary station. There's quill pen writing. There's colonial toys and games. There's a tour of McConkey's Ferry Inn, woolworking, tons of different things. They're all hands-on stations that demonstrate different aspects of colonial life. We also offer normally in August a Colonial Days summer camp. 2018 was an extremely successful year for that. We had 35 campers in 2018. 2019, not quite as successful. We ended up only having 3. But at that summer camp, the campers basically get a week-long version of our Colonial Days program where they do different hands-on activities, they do crafts, they learn about different aspects of colonial life and things like that. We also have large annual events normally, like George Washington's birthday party in February. In 2020, we were able to hold Washington's birthday. It happened just a few weeks before everything truly hit with coronavirus. But we also normally offer a 4th of July event. We normally offer our Wheat and Sheep Day event at Thompson Neely House, where we look at the restored Thompson Neely grist mill with demonstrations of that. And then we also talk about sheep and the importance of livestock and wool to the colonial era. We also shear our sheep at that event. That's normally held in April. And then in October, we normally offer our autumn market and encampment. And then we also hold annual fundraisers. At those fundraisers in 2019, we had a total of about 5,600 people. Those fundraisers include our spring and fall brew fest, which you can see the picture of here, held at Thompson Neely House or on the site of Thompson Neely, where different local brewers bring in their brews basically for tasting. We also have wine on the waterfront. And in 2019, in honor of the 10th anniversary of the Friends of Washington Crossing Park, we had our colonial cocktails and cuisine. Again, that's the before times, if you will. So 2020 looked very, very different. We had to figure out how to work within a pandemic and pivot a lot of our normal programs. So one of the things we did that has been extremely successful is our Camp in a Box distance learning program. It is exactly what it sounds like. For $25, kids ages 7 to 12, which is the same age as our Colonial Days summer camp, get over 20 hands-on activities. These hands-on activities are split into 5 theme days. Be a spy, be in nature, be a historian, be a colonial kid, and be a colonial tradesman. The Camp in a Box includes instructions, historical information, templates, and then you can also see the supplies that are included. Almost all the supplies for those over 20 activities are included in that Camp in a Box. This was actually my baby, if you will, for pretty much all summer. So I really strove to make sure that anything that we do ask parents to supply, and there is a shopping list for parents, but it's all things that they can find around the house. Tape, my goodness, markers, crayons, pen and pencil, glue, scissors, things like that. Or if it's perishable items, it's things you can get at the grocery store. For example, with our butter making activity, we won't give you the cream to make the butter, but we will give you the jar to shake that cream, and we'll give you the plastic spoons to help you make the butter, and we'll give you the instructions, and then all you got to do is run to the grocery store and pick up some cream. So that's been a really successful program for us. As I said, it's offered for $25 in our gift shop. We really strove to make sure as well that Camp in a Box, that all the supplies that we were supplying were things that were very affordable. A lot of things we got stuff from the dollar store, to be honest with you. We also did a lot of outdoor environmental programs, things like working with our environmental educator, Matt, to offer things like Movement Monday or nature walks or a outdoor tie-dye program that was always socially distanced and safe and everything. We also worked a lot with our historical horticulturalist, Anna, as well as our farmstead manager, Ross, to develop different programs based around the Hibbs House Garden. So the Hibbs House Garden is a program that we've been working on for several years, and it recreates a colonial kitchen garden at one of the buildings in our historic village. Anna has done an incredible amount of research and been able to source all these plants and things to the colonial era. So U Point We Pick is exactly what it sounds like, where you come to the Hibbs House, or in some cases also our Thompson Neely House Garden, which looks at a lot of medicinal plants. You point out what you want, we'll pick it for you, and you take it home. And then we also established a new partnership with Delaware Valley University. One of our volunteers, Judy Biederman, had previously taught classes for their Center for Learning in Retirement. And this year in September, she offered a virtual class for their Center for Learning in Retirement called Quill Pens and Communication in Colonial America. That partnership that she did for their virtual class for adults also led us to their Kids U program. And with Judy and the Delaware Valley University Kids U program, we were able to develop quill pens and secret codes, which was offered for kids 7 to 9 years old. The kids each got a packet that included a quill pen and a packet of dried ink, as well as other information. We put in a list of supplies that they would need for the program, a list of additional books if they were interested in learning more. We had information on spies. We included a spy code activity. We included an example of round hand script. And then we also had what we called Spy the Spy, where we'll give you a picture and a name of a famous colonial era spy. And you have to match that colonial era spy up with the description of what they did. So that's been a very successful partnership as well. And then in 2021, stay tuned. We are working on a whole lot of things, a lot of distance learning programs. In addition to Camp in a Box, we are developing touch trunks that we call history chests. Those have been created by our historical interpreter, Nancy O'Leary, who is a retired teacher. They focus on 3 different themes: colonial cooking, education in the colonial era, and colonial toys and games. These will all be available in 2021, but they include hands-on demonstrative items, as well as lesson plans, activity information, additional resources, list of standards that the programs and the lesson plans meet, things like that. There's also the Camp Followers digital program. This was actually produced by our intern this summer, Allison. We were able to offer 2 virtual internships. And this was Allison's program this summer. She led and was able to put together 9 videos about camp followers. The camp followers are the women, primarily the women, but also the children and the men as well, that followed all 3 of these armies throughout the Revolutionary War. Primarily military spouses, which is something, like I said, I myself am. So this is a topic that's very close to my heart. But also mothers, sisters, daughters, sometimes women with no connection following on their own. They were required to do jobs for the Army, specifically laundresses and nurses. The program will also include a downloadable activity packet and lesson plans for grades 5 to 8. And we've developed some virtual lessons on Zoom. We'll actually be testing one of these with Friend Select in the new year, hopefully. At least I've been in contact with someone from Friend Select about testing it. So that is Patriots and Loyalists Opinions During the Revolutionary War. That program is based on an existing downloadable lesson plan that we had on our site or on our website. But the existing downloadable lesson plan was really general, looked at just general information for the different groups, the Patriots, the Loyalists, and the Neutralists. The virtual lesson actually specifically focuses on Thompson Neely House and looks at the history of how that site specifically represents these three groups, from the fact that Thompson Neely House is first built by a Quaker, and in 1776, the matriarch of the family is a Quaker, to the fact that these grist mills, while the Thompson Neely grist mill is owned by a Robert Thompson, who's a Presbyterian. There are many Quakers and other neutralist millers in Bucks County that are having to deal with the fact that Washington's Hungry Army is encamping right in the area, and they could really use that flour. So they're going head to head with that. Then you have the Patriots, the Patriots that are encamping on our site for 3 weeks, as well as the fact that the Thompson's son-in-law, William Neely, serves in Washington's army, and the Loyalists throughout Bucks County, those that supported the British. So looking at how these three groups dealt with each other, why someone would choose one group or the other, things like that. We also have making butter food in the 18th century, which takes our butter making Colonial Day station and expands it. We still demonstrate how to make butter, but we also look at the availability of food for the colonial era and how food is preserved, specifically tying that in with butter because butter was wrapped in salt and to preserve it. And over time, that salt would actually seep its way into the butter. And over time, we developed a taste for salted butter, which you can still buy in the grocery store. So looking at preservation of food, and as I said, the demonstration of making butter, and then the kids make their own butter in the classroom. And then tying into that digital program, we also have a program on the role of camp followers, which looks specifically at the different jobs that these women were doing as camp followers. And then in terms of other programming, we are looking at offering a small virtual program and hopefully eventually in person, once it is safe, a small program each month. For example, we're looking at working with Judy Biederman on offering a Zoom program, looking at tips and tricks for uncovering your own family genealogy. We're also looking at how to pivot our annual events like George Washington's birthday. We will be doing a filming of George Washington in costume, cutting his birthday cake safely, of course, and still having a very small, safe, socially distanced and carefully chosen group of our fife and drummers playing Happy Birthday. So we will offer that film, but we're also going to do craft kits where families can come in and pick up a Ziploc bag that offers different crafts that their children can do. And we'll have a Let's Draw George contest. And that Delaware Valley University partnership also led us to a partnership with Kids U, where we will be offering our Colonial Day summer camp on their site in the summer of 2021. And should we still be unable to do things in person, depending on coronavirus, we will figure out how to do it virtually. So stay tuned for all of that. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed it. So.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was wonderful. It's great to hear how the park is sort of pivoting and doing things different and still staying engaged during this time where we can't be together in person. Before we go, can we just remind our viewers about the virtual reenactment and when and where they can watch?
We will be putting that on our social media and also on our website, www.washingtoncrossingpark.org. It'll be on Christmas Day, December 25th at 10 a.m.
Perfect, perfect. Now, will it be available after
once
10 a.m.?
Premiered, you can go back and watch it whenever you want. That's just when it first comes out.
Great. Perfect. So you can adjust your Christmas plans accordingly or schedule it into your day there. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, Angela. She's very excited for some visits, and she hopes to go in the summer. Yeah, for the first time.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wow.
And definitely come by. We normally also offer tours, of course. Right now, we cannot offer any tours, but fingers crossed, soon, hopefully, things will go back a bit more to normal. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We hope so too. All right,
Thank
Catherine,
you.
thank you so much for your time. And
thank you. Thanks, everybody.
happy crossing.
Merry Christmas. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.